Hey, moviegoers, Dimitri Panos here. Thank you for joining what will be another fantastic episode of KDM. KDM, what's that stand for? Well, it stands for Kit Dimitri Movies. And alongside me is the K of the KDM.
And the D of
Hello,
the
Kit.
Dimitri.
Yeah, that's
Hi.
me. Hey. And the movie that we will be discussing today is none other than Ghostbusters, the Frozen Empire. So we expect this to be a good, fun episode. And I will, as I always do, I always believe ladies first. I at least pretend or try to pretend to be a gentleman. And Kit, how are you? How
I'm good.
things?
I'm good. Everything's good. Everything's good. We're
Fantastic.
starting to heat up, so to speak, or freeze up
Uh-huh.
with the with movies, things are moving forward now and should be
Yeah.
exciting as we get into the summer months because that's always probably one of my faves as far as
Spring and
the
summer.
big movies. Yeah, spring and summer.
Absolutely. 100%. And
Yep.
this one's like, well, it literally is kicking off spring. We
Yeah.
just had the spring equinox, right?
Yep. Yep.
First day of spring was like the 21st or something. Believe it or not, the first day of spring I saw on TV was like there was big debate on that. But in any case, there's no big debate about Ghostbusters Frozen Empire. It is the kickoff of spring.
Okay, I love it.
So,
I love
so yeah. So,
it.
Kit, what did you think of
Well, look,
Ghostbusters Frozen Empire?
I kind of enjoyed the reboot of it. This is the follow up to that, the sequel to the one where it kind of reboots everything. And we had we ended up meeting Spangler's estranged family, so to speak, and the mom played by Carrie Coon, the daughter, I should say, of Spangler, played by Carrie Coon, who I love. I just love her. And then we have the two young kids, McKenna Grace and Finn Wolfhard, who play the two Spangler kids. And then we get all the gang back together again, basically at the end of that first one, which I loved. Even I guess a computer generated Harold Ramis, of course, which it's it's a little sad to see him in that. That definitely cheered me up in the first one, and of course, it was directed by Jason Reitman, who is the son of Ivan, who directed the original Ghostbusters. So here we are
And
again,
Ghostbusters 2.
and Ghostbusters too. Yes. So here we are again. We at the end of the first one, they Winston's played by Ernie Hudson. His character is sort of a real estate tycoon type person, and he ends up buying the old firehouse for the family. And they now, so we start off, we're in the firehouse. Everyone's moved in. Paul Rudd is included now. I guess they're married. I never really got a sense if they were married or not. I think they were. But he's like a
Yeah.
stepdad.
Yeah.
Yeah.
He was, I felt
The
the same
science
way. Like
teacher. Yeah.
the former science teacher,
The former science
Gary
teacher.
Gruberson, who's now takes the name Spangler
Yeah.
and is a
So
Ghostbuster as well.
yeah. So everything starts off with a bang. Basically, they're on the pursuit of a ghost, and they're in the Ecto One mobile, which has now been spruced up, and they so they kind of start off with a chase, and that was a lot of fun. Um, I had a lot of fun with the film overall. I mean, I think for me though, I think it rides on that nostalgia coattails, hence the reason why I liked it. But I think if you kind of start to dissect it a little bit, it is sort of not the best. I don't know. The stories are kind of weak in parts, and there were a lot of kind of characters involved that was kind of there seemed to be a lot of characters and trying to follow through on everything, including a ghost character who kind of wanders into McKenna Grace's what's her character name? Why am I blanking?
Phoebe.
Hold on. Phoebe kind of rolls into Phoebe, floats into Phoebe's life a little bit. And of course there's a reason why she's there, but And the big bad ghost thing was pretty scary, actually. So yeah, I think, I mean, I've read different things about different opinions about it, and some of them I agree with and not. But I think ultimately for me, I enjoyed it just because I love seeing all that together, and I loved all the Easter eggs. And mostly Dan Aykroyd was the main part of it. Also Ernie Hudson a bit, but mostly it was Dan Aykroyd who carried it through. And then you have a few placed cameos by Bill Murray, and then Annie Potts, of course. So and for me, I think Paul Rudd was probably one of the best parts because he's just so funny and cute, and Carrie Coon is great too. But ultimately, yeah, maybe a little muddled, a little not as good as I think as the reboot, the first one, but still had a great time with it. I had fun.
Cool. I mean, listen, I'm not in too much disagreement with anything you said. I mean, for me, Ghostbusters Frozen Empire, it entertainingly continues to move that beloved franchise forward. And I think there was very clever world building. It had laughs.
Yes.
And there was that nostalgia feels that it had to it. And there are some actual scares. And it's hard to believe. And I mentioned nostalgia as you did, and it's hard to believe that this summer, I mean, 40 years later, 40 years, and busting still makes me feel good. I loved Afterlife. Yeah, I had to say it. I really
I
loved
loved Afterlife.
Afterlife.
Yeah.
And yeah, I don't disagree. I'm not sure that was as good as Afterlife, only because of, again, what you were talking about, Egon Spengler. You know, it, Harold Ramis was all these folks are very important to movie going in the 80s, late 70s into the 80s,
Yes.
right? And it's interesting because I look at Ghostbusters Afterlife and this Ghostbusters Frozen Empire, and if you think about it, they kind of parallel the original Ghostbusters and Ghostbusters 2, right?
Yeah.
And Ghostbusters 2 is a movie that through the years grows on. And because I always feel that the original Ghostbusters it's a classic. It's lightning in a bottle. Nobody, including Ivan Reitman himself, if you've ever watched any of the supplemental materials on the Ghostbusters Blu-ray and stuff, Sony didn't necessarily believe in it. Ivan Reitman, who pushed for it, they had no idea
Right.
of the lightning that was going to strike pop culture.
Right.
And it exploded, right? And then Ghostbusters 2 comes out, and it's not Ghostbusters, but what can be, right? And
Right.
I just remember initially seeing it going, yeah, it was funny, it just didn't have or whatever. But as I watched it more and more, I like Ghostbusters 2 more and more. And I think these two movies exemplify that. I love Afterlife. Afterlife, like you, especially the end.
Yeah.
It touched me. It gave me the warm feels, and I welled up. I didn't well up in this movie, but I did find it funny. I do agree with you about Gary Gary Grubison. Right now, I forget his name. I don't know why. What's his name? What's the actor's name?
Paul Rudd.
Lifeline. Paul Rudd. Yes. So I was forgetting Paul Rudd. Yeah, he was really good in this, and he's really funny. In my review, I go as far as saying, I think it's maybe time to hang up the Ant-Man costume. Start doing more movies like this. Like maybe take a nice romantic comedy or something, because I really like him as this charming guy who could be he could be a good friend. He could be a really good father. He plays well with kids. He has a great chemistry with Carrie Coon. And I just really enjoyed that family dynamic. And I'm sure you've heard many a time too that Afterlife and even this movie, it's a passing of the torch. It's a passing of the torch. And I don't subscribe to that argument, because our surviving original Ghostbusters are still there. They're
Yeah.
still part of the story, and they're still growing.
Right.
I appreciated that this story talked about their golden years, right? It's like, we're not doing the heavy lifting here. We're letting this to the younger people in, which makes sense,
Right.
right? But we still can have our own adventures, and we can be of good support. And I really do appreciate that they're still there.
Yep.
They can continue to have the adventure, in being these apparitional sleuths, so to speak. And now we have this younger cast, which again makes sense. Growing up, right? I want to talk about this for a minute, because when the original Ghostbusters came out, obviously it was a different time, 1984. So the movie was probably being made like sometime 82, 83, whatever, gets released in 84. And when you look at the cast, right? These were grand comedic talents.
Yeah.
Bill Murray, who's coming off a major string of hits,
Right.
and he had worked with Ivan Reitman in Stripes, right? You had Dan Aykroyd, right? Who had
his SNL bud, yeah.
SNL and his SNL bud, the Blues Brothers. I think it's not much of a trivia question anymore that Dan Aykroyd had originally envisioned John Belushi to be in it.
Right.
And then you had Harold Ramis, and it was directed by Ivan Reitman. So these people had a great reputation,
yes,
in the comedy world, but then some of them became comedic icons. Bill Murray, right. Dan Aykroyd, right? We don't have that today. But if you grew up same time I did, Ghostbusters also resonated with another group of folks, and that's the kids.
Yes.
Kids wanted to be Ghostbusters, right?
Yes,
remember the toys, right?
Yeah.
And
oh god, and the costumes. Yeah, I mean, it was a huge Halloween. Still is, right?
So it makes sense that Afterlife then focused on kids, to me, right? Because these kids, Phoebe, who was wonderfully played by McKenna Grace,
yeah,
she's living the dream.
Yeah.
That the kids wish they could strap on a proton pack.
Yeah.
And hunt for ghosts, right? So it makes great sense that they do this. But I'm really glad that this older contingent, our originals, are still around to offer their support, and they seem to be having a good time too.
Right.
So I like the big bad in this. I did like this female ghost, Melody. I thought that she was a good thing for Phoebe. It also has
some romantic undertones there.
Okay, so yeah, we were trying to. So the ride home had a very interesting conversation with Christy. We watched this is the first time the three of us watched a movie together. It was a really great time, by the way.
Yep.
It was a great time, and yeah, we had that same conversation. What's going on here? But to watch Ray Stantz and Peter Venkman and Winston together, along with Janine, who, let's face it, would you agree with me that Janine was kind of underutilized in Afterlife? She's in the beginning for a whole 3 minutes, right? She sells them, well, whatever. So, but it also had Walter Peck.
Yes.
Who's now the mayor of New York City. I have no idea how that happened.
Right.
But
okay, it's okay. We'll go with it.
Yeah. I enjoyed the story. I really liked the big bad here. Garaka, who could freeze you in fear.
Right.
It's nice that they came up with a new villain, other than Zool and Gozer here. So I don't know.
In Ghostbusters 2, we had Vigo.
At Vigo, right. So
Vigo.
I
Vigo.
had a really good time with this movie. And it goes to show you, because there's been a lot of conversation on the internet and the social medias and stuff about, and I've been part of a conversation too about using the word masterpiece, and it's just thrown about so loosely today that, I think this movie is a perfect example of a movie. No, it's not a masterpiece, but it doesn't have to be enjoyable
No,
and to be fun,
no.
and this movie
I
was fun.
yeah, it was fun. I think probably the things that I missed the most though was some of that comedy, because Paul Rudd did his best to sort of fulfill that. And then, the minute Bill Murray came on, I'm starting to laugh again. It was like he and Kamal Najami, who plays another character in the film, they're hilarious, you know. And you could just feel Kamal kind of rising up to the occasion. I mean, he's a funny dude. And,
I like the way
trying
you
to,
put that. Yeah.
yeah, yes. And so I think for me, like I said, I enjoyed it. But I enjoyed it because of the nostalgia. I don't think if I necessarily had all of that going into it, I would have loved it as much. Maybe, but I missed some of that comedy. I did. I mean, that the afterlife was kind of fun because it was reinventing and bringing all that back for the first time after all that time, right? And
Sure.
so it didn't have to be necessarily hugely funny, but it had some funny moments to it. But this one, carrying on, I kind of missed that, because even in Ghostbusters 2, he still had them and they were still throwing
Mm-hmm.
out those lines. And then you had Peter McNichol or whatever playing that weird art
Right.
historian guy.
So, yeah, yeah.
And he was freaking hilarious. And
He
I
was.
mean, I think for me, I missed the comedy parts to
Well,
this.
again, it just goes back to we don't have that though today. Like
Yeah,
we don't have. There aren't. Number one, comedy is completely different than what. Well, comedy has changed in the past 10 years, right? Forget about 1984. So, but we don't have those kind of icons today. And again,
well,
I
I
found it
disagree.
very funny.
I think we have some, but they're mostly female, in my opinion. I think the funniest people out there right now are the Kristen Wiigs and the Amy Poehler's and the
Yeah,
Mark
but
and
they're not
Melissa
in movies the
McCarthy's.
way they
No,
don't do the movies the way these people do. And I'm not sure. Yes, I don't disagree with what you said. That I do find that Christian Wiig is very funny, and Amy Poehler and Tina Fey and that group. They can be very funny, but they're not in movies regularly where I would at this point call them icons. I know Tina Fey and 30 Rock, they had this great success on TV, but they haven't quite had the success that some of these other people have, and especially Ivan Reitman. And
right.
I think with Afterlife, I think it's fair
Which
to
was not.
say,
And Frozen Empire was directed by Gil Keenan, right?
yeah. And
Yeah,
let's be like I think it's fair to say that Afterlife I thought it was a great homage to Harold Ramis,
right,
okay, and what he provided to Egon Spengler, okay.
right.
It's obviously it was a wonderful homage. I find that I'm sorry, Frozen Empire. I find it to be a wonderful homage to the great director Ivan Reitman.
Yeah,
I really do. There were some, and he's the person that brought Ghostbusters to life.
right.
He is the person that fought for it, and he wanted to make a horror comedy, much
Yep.
like some of the stuff he grew up with. But Ivan Reitman has some really good comedy movies under his belt, right? And he was never a flashy director.
Right.
He was more of a director that focused on character and character
Right.
reaction than he was the big spectacle of it all. And
Yes.
he could blend them together really well. And I felt that this Gil Keenan, he really captured that style of direction and storytelling where it really wasn't flashy, and there were good like set pieces, so to speak, but it was all about the reaction or the horror. And there were both audio cues and visual cues in this movie that harken back to what Ivan Reitman did with the original Ghostbusters that I thought were great. You
Right.
know, so
I'm curious
yes,
on why Jason didn't direct it. I'm curious.
because his dad died. He found it very difficult. So the way that, because I've actually been reading a lot about this, Jason and this Gil Kinnan,
Well,
they came up with the
they wrote
story.
up, right?
They wrote Afterlife. They wrote this story, and they actually showed the story to Ivan. And they, you know, they were going to get going on, and then Ivan passed away. Jason didn't feel he could direct it. In fact, I had read some accounts that said he had a hard time being on set.
Oh.
And because remember, and this was brought up a lot during Afterlife, Jason was on the set of the original Ghostbusters with his dad and with his cast. Like he grew up, that cast watched Jason grow up.
Yeah.
So these are people that were near and dear to him. They
Right.
were a family in a sense. And I kind of understand. And so he's like, Gil, I want you to do this. They grew up together. So that, and it makes sense.
Yeah.
It makes sense to me why. And look, I don't think this isn't a spoiler that's going to ruin the movie for you, but you know, the movie was dedicated to Ivan.
And I just looked it up. He died right after the so he died in 22. So 21 was when Afterlife came out. So yeah. So that makes sense.
So they were getting that ball rolling. And yeah, so I understand Jason Reitman. It might be a little bit difficult for me to do.
Yeah.
And especially with the feels that you're going into with Afterlife. So, you know, to me, it's just crazy that 40 years, like this summer will be 40 years of Ghostbusters. And that to me is like, it's just crazy.
Yep.
And that it's still around, and that most of our cast is still with us, thankfully. You know, I guess if I was disappointed in this movie for anything was forgive me, but I don't know if people would consider this a spoiler or not, but there was no Sigourney Weaver. She does make a cameo at the end of Afterlife, which is a really fun cameo. And you know,
you're missing I think she does the cameo at the end of the Ghostbusters with the women.
No, she's at the end. She's at an end credit button in Afterlife where she's with Venkman. Yeah, she's with Venkman, and she's giving Venkman that flashcard test. What am I holding up? And like she's it's at the end. It's there.
Oh, okay.
And she's even in the credits, but she's not in the main body of the film. It's like a post-credit scene. And it's great because it also tends to make one believe that they're kind of together.
Right.
So, right. And don't forget, she still has a baby. Right. So, it was, I missed her. And, you know, how can we not miss, the wonderful Rick Moranis?
Oh, and Rick Moranis.
You know, how can we not miss, how can we not miss him?
Yeah.
So, and he was in the first two movies, and
yeah, I think he doesn't act anymore, right, or something.
He doesn't, you know, he's out. They've tried, and he's like, nope, nope. And okay, I understand his reasons, but it is a bummer because he was such Tuttle. He was such a part.
I know. That's what I'm saying. The Ghostbuster, the very first one, obviously, I don't think anyone is ever going to be able to top that. It's just not going to happen. That was lightning in a bottle, and that was, that was pure comic genius from all of those wonderful people. And they, had already established that. And just the whole idea behind it, the script and everything was just spot on perfect. I mean, it's a perfect comedy, but also, thrown in there with the supernatural and the all of that, which makes it just even more fun, to me. So I just think that they'll never be able to top that. So anything beyond that, we still enjoy it, but it can't be what it was. So I don't know. In my opinion, they don't really need to make any more. I don't see how this cast can move on and go and be even better. I don't see it. I mean, I appreciate having a second one just to see how it all kind of wrapped up, but we'll see how much money it makes. If it makes a ton of money, then we know we're going to do a third one.
Which
And maybe
I'm all open for. I
and
really
maybe
am, because
maybe Sigourney will be in that third one, and then the kid,
there we
who's not an
go.
adult, maybe he'll enter into
And the kid becomes a Ghostbuster. It goes from being in an orchestra saying, let's do this. Like, that's fun. I want to be with Phoebe in that. I want to be with that Spangler family. They're awesome. Like that. There you go, guys.
What was his name? Oscar? Was it Oscar?
Oscar. Yes. Oh, you're right, senor. So,
okay. Maybe if they do that, but if they continue like on with what they have to expand it a little bit more and add and try to include other people. So that would be my 2 cents.
They had the Paranormal Research Center, which plays a main part in this, right? Yeah. So that Dan Aykroyd is there. Now we have Kamal is part of this crew, and he was funny. I gotta be honest.
Funny.
He was
funny.
He was very funny. And
well, I'm telling you, the minute he and Bill Murray did their little scene together, for me that was it. I mean, that was pure comedy right there.
It really was. But I love that also gave Janine Melnitz a little bit more to do, and she actually suited up, and we saw some new tech, like her proton. Yeah. She had a proton wrist thing that was kind of cool, and I like that. I like the kind of world building around this world, because to your point too, like, there is a nostalgia around it. But I even think, though, for newbies, if it gets people to watch the original Ghostbusters, if it gets a younger audience to do that, that's fantastic. I don't think Ghostbusters goes out of style. I don't think it's really ever gone out of style. To your, you had mentioned that, people to this day still dress up as this. Finn Wolfhard, who plays Trevor, the brother, in Stranger Things, they dressed up as Ghostbusters.
Yeah.
There's a reason for that. So it's really struck our pop culture in such I think, a positive way. And to have innocent fun in a movie, I just don't see anything. I mean, I just love it. I love that it brings that to it, and it doesn't have to be a masterpiece. I felt the visual effects were really good.
Obviously that keeps getting better. Yeah.
and the budget was $100 million. It's reported as $100 million. And we've seen movies that are over $100 million that don't look like as good. And I think that goes with directing, and I think that goes with the producing people. And I know Dan Aykroyd, if you had noticed the logo at the very beginning with, like, it's called Ghostbusters Core. Like, that's what he kind of had envisioned was a core of Ghostbusters. Like, it didn't just have to be New York and stuff like that. So who knows where it goes? Me personally, I would love at least one more movie.
Yeah.
And then judge, like, whether it's good or bad or indifferent. But give me one more movie, and I hope this one does well. Just one more.
I think it's doing well so far. I think the previews were pretty. The preview money seemed to be pretty good, so we'll see.
And we did see it at a great format, did we not? We saw it at Dolby Theater, right? We saw it at an AMC Dolby Theater. It was great. It looked fantastic. My only complaint is that night that AMC wouldn't sell me that popcorn bucket. I mean, it was a night of Ghostbuster previews. They had a friends and family screening at the theater. It was Ghostbusters. Was on like a couple of screens there, and it's like, hey, you got it? Oh, we have them in. Let me see if I can sell it to you. No. Oh, so you don't want my money? Okay, fair enough. I'll just go see the movie for free.
Right? And
So,
get one then. So
I
what
can't-
rating? So what's your rating
I
for this?
give Ghostbusters. I give it 4. I give it a 4. I thought it was. I was very entertained by it, and it struck me. I give Afterlife a 5. I give Afterlife the high 5. This one, I give a 4. I do agree
I'm gonna go
with you that
slightly.
it's not as
I'm
good.
gonna do slightly less. I'm gonna say 3.5, just because
Fair enough.
like I said, there's some things I missed, but I still enjoyed it overall and I had a good time. And I think kids will have a good time. I mean, I think it will continue on. And sure, having McKenna and Finn in it also is a good plus, because they're both, pretty popular, and they're all on social media and everything. So they've been promoting it. So I have a feeling it's gonna do pretty well. Yeah.
McKenna Grace is fantastic in this role.
Yeah, she's
And
good.
you know what? And she comes
She's
off.
she's
She was a
grossed
fan.
all up now. She's so pretty.
I know, but she attacks this role, or she approaches it. She approaches it as a fan,
Yeah.
and she plays it as a fan. And I just love what she did. I don't think she had a song in this one. That too, I guess, was a little bit of a bummer. She had a song
Yeah.
in Afterlife that she sang and
Oh,
performed.
right,
But
right.
yeah, so I give it a 4. You're giving it a 3.5. So all in all, those are
Still,
positive.
yeah.
Those are positive reviews, positive notices. People, listen, if you're a fan of Ghostbusters, I don't believe this movie is going to let you down tremendously. I think you're going to have
No.
a good time at the
Yeah.
movies. You can tell us too. We won't be offended.
Yeah.
I
Comment
might.
in the
Kit won't.
comments.
I might be offended. Kit's never offended. I mean, she does a show with me, so how can she be?
Roxanne.
Oh, I love you. You've been a good
So, I think
companion friend.
next week we got another good one. Well, we'll see. Godzilla and Khan getting together, fighting the bad guys.
Yeah, I don't know. Again, I will be speaking of. Well, yes, I too am looking forward to that movie. I've liked the Godzilla and the King Kong movies thus far. Some better than others, but all in all,
Yeah.
entertaining movies. I'm looking forward to this. But next week, though, I will be at a con, not a
Oh.
Kong. Let's get this. I will be at Christy and I will be at WonderCon next week. So our weekend will be a little bit tied up, and Godzilla
Maybe
King
we can
Kong may
sneak it.
have to wait.
We'll be able to
But
sneak
yeah.
it in there somewhere.
Yeah. I mean, but it's a good one to have. Are you looking?
Yeah.
You're looking forward to it, right?
Oh yeah, absolutely. All
Oh, did
right.
you see Godzilla -1?
I have not.
Yeah, neither. I was. That's a regret. I'm sorry that I
Yeah.
missed that in the theaters, but
Well, we'll
I
get
am
a
looking
chance to
forward
at
to
some
that.
point.
We've got plenty of movies coming up too. Hopefully
Yep.
we can sneak that one in because we are fans of this stuff. Like,
Yeah.
folks, we're fans. Like, I mean, I don't want to speak for you. Fan first, reviewer second. I love to have my fandom and the history come through in my reviews. So I think what I can say for the both of us, if you allow me to speak for you, is our opinions, our reviews come from the heart and come for the love of movies.
Yes.
First and foremost. So
yes, absolutely.
and
so
for the
join
love
us
of
next
Kit
week.
and doing this, or join us sometime soon. Thank you, Kit. Thank you for being a friend. Yeah.
And to you as well. I always have to do the right. Okay, anyway, so that's how that works. All right, guys. So thanks for tuning in, and we will be back. We will be back with our
Yes.
fandom and our cinephileness.
Yes. Is that a word?
Okay. All right.
Bye.
Bye-bye, everybody.